everybody, and welcome to Globsec from me as well. And please, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very interesting panel coming up. We have 3 ministers of foreign affairs. We were supposed to be 4, but unfortunately, Minister Albares Bueno from Spain is not going to join us. He's not been able to come to Bratislava today. Therefore, we will not hear from the upcoming EU presidency. But on the other hand, 3 guests whom we have here to discuss Europe's geopolitical moment, or a moment of geopolitics, are here. Please welcome the Foreign and European Affairs Minister of the Slovak Republic, Mr. Wlachovský. Minister, would you please join us here?
Oh.
This seat, please.
Thank you.
Minister Alexander Schallenberg, Federal Minister for European and International Affairs of the Republic of Austria, please. And also warm welcome to Minister Jan Lipavsky, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic. So, we are now going to discuss how is Europe managing this difficult time in history. On the other hand, I don't know whether you agree with me or not, but I think history has always been difficult, and actually this period which we are now living with war in Europe, with polycrisis, I mean, it couldn't have been better when there was plague and famine. So let's not be discouraged, I believe. We shouldn't be discouraged neither. Nevertheless, our Europe definitely has a lot of work to do. And there has been lots of talk about Eastern Europe and Central Europe having more impact on how Europe in general now thinks and acts. And maybe that is right, but I think let's dig a little bit in history. Minister Wlachovský, I would like to ask you this question. 24th of February, the day when aggression started, which for my country, by the way, happens to be our Independence Day, forever ruined. But what was your hope? What did you hope? How will our Europe react? What did you dare to hope? And if you now look back and compare it to how European Union has reacted.
Yeah, I remember that very well. And just 2 days before, I was at that time a Slovak ambassador to Kingdom of Denmark, and just 2 days before, I met with my Ukrainian colleague, and we all knew about the Russian forces on the Ukrainian border. But even he himself was not sure that there will be full-scale invasion. So I think we were surprised. Most of us were surprised by this decision of Putin, President Putin, to go fully into Ukraine. And I think he made it pretty black and white. That was an act of aggression. It was clearly demonstration that no rules are valid anymore for Russia, no rules of international conduct and relations between the states. So initially it was a shock, even though we had the intelligence about Russians possibly coming to Ukraine. But I must say, to your question, I was positively surprised by reaction of the West and European Union, because European Union is often presented as a body which reacts slow. The deliberations there are very long and things like that. And I think everybody was surprised by effectivity of the reaction of European Union in that moment. So I don't know. It was a shock which created this flexibility and quick reaction, but it definitely counts among one of my more positive experiences.
So, since I'm not in the office like you all are, I can honestly say we all expected European Union to be deeply concerned. But we got action this time, and I think we can all be proud of that. Minister Schallenberg, What are the particular challenges for Austria in this crisis? Because they are notably different from the rest of us here on the panel, because you are not a NATO ally yet, maybe. I would add a question mark or an invitation mark if there were any. And also, you're the country who has always advocated for peaceful cooperation and development and conquering by economic liaison with Russia and Belarus. So where do you stand on this situation now, where you can see Austria could push most, I mean, to help Ukraine to win this war, come as quickly as possible close to the Europe, and how will we treat thereafter Russia and Belarus when the war has been won, but there has been no regime change, which probably is unfortunately the most likely outcome of this conflict. Fortunately for Ukraine, but they are not out there to, I mean, you will not be able at the end of the war to buy beer in Moscow in hryvnias. That much we know. So what will we do?
Oh, first of all, thank you for the invitation, and it's great to be back again at GlobSec. Secondly, there were 5 questions at least, if I counted correctly.
Absolutely.
So if you give me half an hour, I might answer them. No, but I want to make a point, what you said at the very beginning, that's very important. We have to underline it again and again. Europe is the continent of doomsayers. And whatever a challenge comes up, normally in the public domain, the first reaction is, oh God, we will fail, we will not be living up to the challenge. And now we had 2 years or 3 years of pandemic, which was the first time experience for all of us. We have war back again, 500 kilometers away from here, in Europe, something we hope we'll never see again. And yet we are actually faring well. We are standing together. We are acting as one. And the odds are on our side. We will prevail. And this is something we, as politicians, I believe we have the job to again and again give this positive message. So thank you for making this point at the beginning. And yes, you're right. Austria, like other countries too, we were maybe naive. We had this wishful thinking, you know, after the fall of the Iron Curtain. We thought the world is moving our way. And somewhere inside of us Europeans, we thought that this post-national, post-historic Europe would sort of, via osmosis, you know, expand. And the 24th of February last year is somewhat, sometimes I call it a strategic ice bucket thrown at our face. And it was the end of 30 years of holiday from history. It was the end of this illusion we had in Europe that somehow we are outside of history. If we see war, it's either in black and white pictures because it comes from the past, or it comes from another continent, and we are safe, and somehow we will continue working like that. And I believe that what we have seen since the 24th of February is this sense, and it's each time in crisis. Each time there's a crisis, European communities stand up to it. The European Union lives up to this challenge. And again, we have done so. We have put together 10 sanctions packages, the largest ever in history. We are working on the 11th. And you can be, referring to a question of neutrality, I would say you can be sitting in the Council and the Foreign Ministers since February last year, and you would not notice that there's any neutral country. Because for us Austrians, since we became neutral in 1955, it was very clear we are neutral in strictly military terms, but never as far as values are concerned. And just to give you an example, in 1956, when Soviet tanks were rolling through Budapest, the Austrian, very young, fully sovereign and very young, fully neutral country, we voted for every resolution in the UN General Assembly against the Soviet Union. We even tabled a resolution there. So in this respect, we have never been neutral, and we will never be.
Good, but what about containing Russia thereafter? Yeah. Let's imagine the dream day has arrived. Ukraine has won. Its territorial integrity is protected. Hopefully it will continue its quick path to come close to the European Union and become a member. What's the Austrian thinking about how to treat thereafter Russia? Pretend it is not the North Korea, or accept it is a North Korea?
Yeah, no, this is a question which necessitates some thinking. I always cite Egon Bahr, the architect of the East policy of Germany, saying the US, the United States, are irreplaceable, but Russia is unmovable. So whatever we do, history doesn't change and geography won't change. It will remain the biggest geographic neighbor of Europe. And I believe, and that was we have been advocating for, especially we Europeans, we have to be capable of making the difference somehow between Putin and his henchmen and his regime and the Russians. Yes, it might be difficult, but I believe that there is a very important differentiation, which we continue doing, for instance, on Iran, which we continue doing on North Korea. We have never put the whole population in a basket. And we should be very careful. The last regime on European soil doing that was something where we definitely don't want to make a reference to. So with all emotions we have to acknowledge that geography won't change. But one thing is for certain, there's no return to status quo ante. With Putin and his regime and his people, there's simply no going back to the times we had before. That's unthinkable.
So we heard from you, Minister, something like this. All big businesses who have sold their assets in Russia but have buyback clauses in 5 or 7 years, you're not going to be able to exercise them. That's what I understand. Minister Lipavsky, I have a little bit broader question to you. After all, in order to defend the free world globally, we need all our partners, US, we need also all other free democracies, Quad nations and all the others. How do you see European Union could reach out more to form such a global coalition of free and democratic nations at this point of time? Of course, we could, just sit and wait until US, offers us, let's say, more and better economic cooperation, some kind of free trade agreements in order to, come out from China trade, which we right now have so much, and somehow make us more stick together. But also Europe could take the lead, for example. What do you think? What could we do?
Thank you for having me here, and thank you for this great conference. And to that question, we need more of geopolitical Europe. And in a certain sense, the geopolitical Europe was born on 24th of February last year. It was in Paris. I'm sure that, Alexander, you remember, we were in Paris having the meeting with our ASEAN friends, but later on we again convene as a FAC in a FAC format to discuss what will be next. And since that time, it was those 10 sanction packages, but many more. Many more has been done and will be done in terms of having geopolitical Europe. And geopolitical Europe means that the tools, abilities, and means we already have will be more connected to our core interests, such as security and protection of the way of our life. And yes, it is the EU, so it is sloppy, it is slow. Sometimes it's more bureaucratic than it would be necessary. But we have a real power through our trade agreements. We have a real power through the sheer amount of money which are given on different kind of development aid and humanitarian projects and transformation of our neighborhood. So we have a power of enlargement. We have a lot of soft power. And Europe is also looking for ways how to build up real power. It can be done. It needs to be done in partnership with the USA in many senses, because I don't think that we are in a position to compete, especially if we are speaking about power rise of China. That I say that our bloc needs to be more united than divided. And Russia is giving us lesson every day and is showing that we need to be ready to protect our way of life. Yes, we are back to the roots. The EU or the European project was founded as a peace project. It's forgotten in many debates on trade policies and regulations, but the core of Europe, common Europe, goes back to the fact that we don't fight each other, but we are protecting the way of our life. And maybe I would not disagree. Maybe I would not agree with everything which Alex said on Russia. It's not only about Putin. It's Russian imperialism. It's that idea that Russia is not sure with its borders. It's this idea that I can come and with sheer force I can proclaim this is my territory, which has already happened 2 times in few years. So we have to be ready, maybe not for hot confrontation, but for cold confrontation. We have to be ready to detain Russian influence. Yes, some business connections will be possible, definitely, but first and foremost, we need to be ready to protect Europe from this evil idea of Russian imperialism.
Thank you. Quite soon we will go to questions from the auditorium. Yes, you don't get to anonymously ask them on Slido. You have to be brave to raise your hand and ask for a microphone, and then the question will be asked and hopefully also answered. But because Minister Wlachovský was rather economic with words in the first round, he gets a second round. And because we do not have our Spanish colleague here, so we could actually write a wish list to him. What do we want European Union, let's say, to achieve in the next 12 months? In order to make sure that Ukraine feels fully supported. Because let's look at the numbers for a second. Renew Europe, 800 billion, Ukraine, 4.8 billion. Numbers don't tell the story that we are all in. Numbers tell, of course, that European Union is doing more than it has ever done to prop up anybody's defense. And there is no getting away from that our treaty does not foresee that we help each other with such spending. And now we have put close to 5 billion to help Ukraine. Nevertheless, if I look at the amounts, they're not so big. What could Europe do? Another sanctions package? Make sure that the sanctions packages are not leaky, because, you know, economy is a wonderful thing. It adapts. What else could our Europe do in the next year?
Well, I don't necessarily see to be economic with words as a bad thing, and I'm not sure I can.
No, I just wanted to be on par with everybody gets to speak.
Yeah, and I know I'm not sure I will get the richness of my Spanish colleague in that, but look, you're right. Europe does much more than any time before. I mentioned it already today once, that there is this American saying that what is the biggest room in the world? The room for improvement. And I stick with that. We can do much more. I can say about Slovakia, I mean, we are a relatively small country of the European Union, but when it came to the help to Ukraine, and especially the military part, we send there not only equipment and not only military aid in about 669 million of euros, but what was more important from my point of view, when it was sent, because in the war time counts as well. It's an important factor, and the fact that Slovakia was able to send S-300 to Ukraine as the first country, the fact that we were able to send our jet fighters MiG-29, which we couldn't use in Slovakia, but they were able to repair them and use them in time and pay way for others. I think that was very important contribution of my country to the situation in Ukraine. And I keep saying that what we need in Ukraine is a just peace, that peace which will reward the victim and punish the aggressor. And the easiest way to reach that peace, it would be the withdrawal of Russian forces from Ukraine. However, I don't see any will from Russia to withdraw their troops. So I'm afraid that the way to peace must be decided on the ground, and therefore our support, continuous support, is badly needed.
I think that is why we were all so happy in the Munich Security Conference to hear everybody saying they are ready to support Ukraine as long as it takes, because we need perseverance here. Minister Schallenberg, yes.
May I just come in with a point? Absolutely agree. We have to continue supporting Ukraine, and we have to continue doing it as long as it takes. And this will be a tough year. We will see again the battlefield and bloodshed raging, and we have seen it 2 days ago again with Russia bombarding actually the whole country again. So I believe we have to be prepared to see worst pictures coming out of Ukraine. But what I'm warning is we should, though with all the focus we have on Ukraine, and rightly so, we have to be aware that this is a global matter. It is a war in Europe, but not a European war. And we are in a battle of narratives. So if you ask me what I think, what we have, what I would expect, and I believe the Spanish presidency would be well placed, in the last month, I've been meeting again and again representatives, foreign ministers of what you call the global south. I don't like the formulation, but we see ourselves in a battle between black and white, good and evil, democracy and freedom against autocracy. And they see the world fragmented. They don't follow our narrative on Russia, on China, on other things. And I believe we should get our act together there. We have to be aware that, and it should be a shock to us Europeans. We're the biggest aid donor. We're the biggest donor of humanitarian aid and development aid to the African countries. We are the biggest trading partner. And yet it's easy for Russia to come across with, we are the imperialists and not them, while they're actually simply invading another country because I believe they want a chunk of it. So this is something that should come as a shock, because it shows us that our soft power is less than we believed, and I believe there's work to be done in the next couple of months, reaching out of Europe and making ourselves understand, but also without moral finger pointing, trying to teach them, but on an eye-to-eye level. And I believe that's a big task, and I know that the Spanish presidency will be very active in this realm as well.
Another bucket of ice over our heads. I agree with you. Other questions in the audience? Yes, please. Microphone here. And could other people wave their hands as well? Then we can already, Next microphone, please move over there already.
Thank you very much. My name is Juraj Petrovič. I'm from the weekly magazine Týždeň in Bratislava. I have questions to all of you. In the former panel, we heard from the former Defense Secretary of the US that we should prepare for a decades-long conflict in Europe. Maybe not a war in Ukraine, but a decades-long conflict. Is European Union prepared for that? And what should be done to be prepared for that? And what should be done to communicate this towards the public? Because most of the politicians, not you, Mr. Minister, but most of you have to be elected. And how we counteract the populists, which are then playing this card in the elections. Thank you.
Maybe Minister Lipavsky, you want to start?
It is not a matter only of the EU, but all national states are responsible for the protection and defense of their respective countries. And even the NATO is built up on that assumption. The EU is not ready, but with every sanction package, with every new legislation, we are closer in a better position. And yes, European security is tightly connected to the state of NATO, which we'll see in Vilnius how that will go. I am optimistic because NATO was built up as a security. So change the word Soviet for Russia, and here we are. It's sad that we are playing again this playbook, but this is what it is. I expect, and we expect, and our foreign policy, I mean Czechia foreign policy, is built up on assumption that Russia will present a threat for Europe for decades. Threat to Europe means threat to Czechia security. Simple as that.
Who else wants to add? Yeah. Please.
Maybe I can point, because it's important what you're asking. Yes, we are democracies. Yes, we have public debates. And there's one going on now in Slovakia. And we have the same debates in Germany, in Austria, and other countries, in France and so on. And we have opposition parties saying they would deal differently with the situation. So this is called democracy, and we should be very careful. And we have sometimes a tendency of treating national debates, and even more debates on European level, as if they were a sign of weakness. And no, we are debating, and the question is, do you reach an agreement at the end? And then I would point, as you did, to history. We had the same during the Cold War. There were elections, there were parties who had a different approach, but at the end, the European Union stood as one. And normally, I would say in history, when we have an external challenge, then that's the moment of glory of the European Union. And so I'm actually pretty positive. But yes, we do have to do explaining. And yes, we have to get our narrative straight. And by the way, we should not forget that there are other topics. I can point to migration, for instance, huge topic in Austria and Germany and the Netherlands. So with all the focus on Ukraine, we should not forget that we have inflation, we have an industry policy, we have other things as governments to take care of and to explain to our people.
And if I may react, you are absolutely right. I do not run for election, so maybe I can be very open about certain things. Due to that fact, I don't have to do all the promises. Look, I think the promises of peaceful coexistence, of Cold War, peace dividend, and a certain naivety when it comes to Russia, took us where we are. And I think what is important is to speak directly to people about what are the threats we are facing, and about the fact that we are in it for a long time. And we have to adjust our behavior, our resources. I'm afraid that the hope and goodwill won't be enough. We have to reflect it in our budgets and in our preparedness, including the military preparedness.
Thank you. The question over there, where microphone now hopefully already is, but while this question gets found out, Minister Lipavsky wanted to add something, so please, Minister, add and then.
Yes. So who is?
Just a sentence, I understand you had something to add.
I wanted to just share a little thought that I have developed this strange habit of watching Russia TV propagandists for last year. And they have debate in TV every evening. So many words are said there, but it was like a week ago when someone said, okay, maybe a different leadership would help solve our situation. And the face of the TV moderator was like this, okay. So I think it's a good sign that we are having a lot of debates, and this is what we should be proud of.
So please.
And it makes us strong.
Next question, and you don't get to answer each and every question, so please.
I'll be pointing to that anyway. My name is Joseph Rabina, I'm Geopolitical Risks Advisor from Slovakia, and I wanted to ask about military aid to Ukraine, European military aid to Ukraine. What's left in tank? What's left in stock? Because, I mean, we know that European defense industry has been scrambling for past several months. We saw a great effort from the European Union and European Commission with fast tracking of ammunition procurement. But what's really in our capabilities? And then again, if there are no defense capabilities or capacities to supply Ukraine with necessary military help, who's going to step in? Is it South Korea, Japan, or which countries? What's the thinking now? Thank you very much.
We also have, of course, ministers of defense on this conference who would know better the details, but maybe I could reword a little bit this question. And I mean, we have noticed that European defense industry is indeed slow in kind of picking up new production lines and making itself ready to prepare for what has been said already. Is Europe doing enough to promote this, or are the markets right? Because markets right now are predicting, obviously, that our appetite for more military and defense equipment is short-lived. Otherwise, they would act differently. So who wants to answer that question? Minister Lipavsky. And meanwhile, microphone moves over there, please, already.
It is valid for 150 years that the wars are not won only on battlefields, but also by power of economics and nations as such. So Europe has this kind of power, we have this kind of industry, and it is a matter of political will to provide Ukraine what is necessary. I think it was very successful when Ukraine was provided with anti-air systems. I think hopefully we will soon see that it was a successful operation when we provided Ukraine with different kind of BVP and tanks and so on. But it's a complex matter. We need to continue. It won't happen like a wave with a magic wand.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Thank you, Kirsten Schmidt. These days, helping to implement Dayton Peace Agreement in Bosnia-Herzegovina and to prepare this country for European integration, as you agreed and stated to have this country as a candidate for European Union. A question which refers to the whole Western Balkan region and the influence not of Russia, but the influence of China. The Obama administration had defined the pivot towards Asia in their military doctrine. We see that global strategically in this region as well, we see some footprints, growing footprints of Chinese. What would be, in your estimation, the European Union answer to this challenge? As well, a pivot towards Asia?
So, Balkans and predatory capital from totalitarian regimes. Who wants to take that? Minister Schallenberg?
Maybe briefly, and thank you for the question, because you're pointing, Christian, to something which is important. And you know that I'm always saying if we are about to learn the geostrategic alphabet or the language, I believe our litmus test are the Western Balkans. Because this is not the backyard of Europe. This is our central court. This is our patio. It's surrounded by you member states. I mean, what do you need more? And that's why I started calling it Southeastern Europe instead of Western Balkans, because it has another connotation. And you're absolutely right. 20 years ago, we promised them in Thessaloniki that every country has the perspective of joining the European Union. Now, we are 20 years later. Where do we stand? Last year, we took the low-hanging fruit, and the equation is very simple. Either we manage to export and anchor for good our model of life, or we will be confronted with different models of life. There might be Turkish, Chinese, Russian, whatever, but we won't like it. And Austria is one of the most, we are among the top 3 investors in all of these countries. And sorry to point again to history, and maybe this is a time where people should learn a little bit again, look into the history books. History has shown again and again, if you don't have lasting stability and prosperity in Southeastern Europe, normally you don't have lasting stability in Central Europe. And we know in history in the last 2 centuries what happens if in Central Europe something goes wrong. So this is in our own interest to clearly invest there, and it's not only about China. I mean, to give you an example, sorry if I'm longer, but how come we let Chinese companies build highways leading from nowhere to nowhere in countries like Montenegro? Actually, these countries should be part of our trans-European network system, because they're linking at the end Greece to Croatia or Bulgaria to, they're linking to EU states. And we are as crazy to let other countries move in. Then this country is indebted and we have to jump in, or banks have to jump in to free this country from a burden of debt to China. This is the very contrary of geostrategic thinking. And I believe the first test of our geostrategic thinking is in this region. If we fail there, then let's stop talking about other challenges which are even bigger.
Yeah, microphone please over here. And I do agree with you that it's frozen situation. I mean, for example, Kosovo, which has its foreign policy totally harmonized with Europe, has less favorable conditions than Serbia, for example. How come? We seem to have forgotten. Please.
Thank you very much. In fact, that's exactly along the lines of my question, and similar direction from High Representative Schmidt, although I turn from China to Russia. My name is Edward Joseph, Johns Hopkins SAIS. Very nice to see you again, Foreign Minister. Questions for each of you, but in particular, esteemed Foreign Minister from Slovakia. So Russia is carrying out a low-cost, high-reward agenda in the Balkans through strategic partnerships. Strategic partnership with Serbia, exactly as you referred, and of course in Bosnia-Herzegovina with Milorad Dodik. And we've just seen now the Prime Minister of Kosovo, Albin Kurti, sharply criticized, including by the United States, perhaps deservedly so. But exactly as you suggest, what about the posture towards Serbia, which defies the European Union, refuses to put sanctions on, and now we see the autocrat Alexander Vučić facing the most serious, unprecedented protests in Serbia? That's number one. But particularly for you, esteemed Foreign Minister from Slovakia, what about Slovakia's position towards Kosovo? Your esteemed former Foreign Minister Miroslav Lajčák, with the U.S. help, has brokered an agreement, EU proposal. It's struggling. We've seen Alexander Vučić defy and try to undermine this agreement. How about Slovakia finally recognizing Kosovo, taking this leverage away from Alexander Vučić, or in the alternative, at least returning Slovak troops to KFOR in Kosovo? Thank you very much.
So, Minister Wlachovský, since your country has taken responsibility and led, then responsibility to answer this question.
Okay, I will answer this particular question, but I will also come back to the question which were asked previously. Europe must move from payer to player. And I think there is no better ground where to show it than in our neighborhood in Western Balkans. That should be our ambition, and I completely agree with Alexander that we cannot continue just in promises we gave 20 years ago. But it's an equation. It's not only what we do, but it's also what the Western Balkan countries do. And there is some homework to be done, and this homework we should closely follow. So it's also up to them to fulfill the criteria. And when it comes to Kosovo, I am a foreign minister, I'm a member of the government, but we have a resolution of the Slovak parliament, which I have to observe, which is a legislative body which is above me. So, and it clearly says that if there will be an agreement between Belgrade and Pristina, we can move on. We are doing everything to get better and better relations with Kosovo under that ceiling, but for a moment, we continue to be among 5 of European Union members which do not recognize Kosovo. It's not just Slovakia.
Thank you. There was a question in the third line over there. Yes, please.
And just one more comment about Serbia. You will have Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić here. You can ask him directly. That's the pleasure of the Globsec.
Yes,
okay,
please.
it works now. Josef Batra, Professor of Political Science at Comenius University in Bratislava. 2 very specific questions, one for all panelists. We're talking about geopolitical Europe. At the same time, European Union has been losing ground on the African continent, places like Mali, Mozambique, Central African Republic, to a private military company called Wagner Group. Now, there's a proposal on the table from the French National Assembly to name that group as a terrorist group. Would that be something that these 3 countries would support? That's the first question. Second question for Minister Schallenberg. Austria has been reworking its security strategy for a few months now. There has been a debate about neutrality. What is the concept of neutrality in a situation where you have gray zones of the kind that we're discussing with the Wagner Group and so on? How can you be neutral? What does it really mean to be neutral in relation to actors like the Wagner Group? Thank you.
So maybe Minister Schallenberg wants to think a little bit about the second question. Mr. Lipavsky, please, the floor is first yours.
It's clear that Wagner is operation run directly from Moscow and hired for different purposes, and it needs to be dealt with it in serious way. I don't know if putting it on a specific list of terrorist organization is the right solution. I understand that certain countries did that already, especially the EU has already listed Wagner's and the representative of Wagner's in those 11 sanction packages, which has the same effect. And I think we need more, especially in Africa, if we want to seriously be countermeasuring their influence.
Minister Schallenberg, please.
Yeah, maybe on Wagner Group, we had this similar debate on the Revolutionary Guards in Iran. And I believe we have to keep in mind there's also a legal issue there. If I remember correctly, that the national court has to declare this organization as terrorist organization, then only the European Union can act, and then we as Austrians at least can put it into law in Austria. So there are legal implications to that, but I agree the same with the Iranian National Revolutionary Guards. It's important that we have the actors and the companies standing behind it on the sanctions list, and believe that is the main focus. On neutrality, I mean, again, as I said at the beginning, we have our neutrality is a purely, strictly military neutrality, meaning no alliance, no foreign troops on Austria, no foreign bases in Austria. But on everything else, we are not neutral. We have said so when we entered the European Union, that we will be there in full solidarity. And we do the same thing now. We are supporting our actions. So on Wagner Group, my line, and I said that 4 years ago in first interview as Foreign Minister, my red line is international law. And we as Austrians, if somebody believes, and it's a P5 country, permanent member of the Security Council, he can kick out of, the very principles that we have established after 55 million dead people in the Second World War. And these principles protect us Austrians. Because sometimes I half-jokingly say, we don't have a nuclear weapon. We have Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. We might have soft power. We don't have hard power. And international law is our protection. And we need a system where people respect these rules. I don't want to live in a system where you have the law of the jungle. So in this respect, Austria has never been neutral and will never be neutral. And that goes for Wagner Group, this goes for every other situation as well. So again, you can be sitting in the council and you won't see that Cyprus, Ireland or Austria are neutral, because in these issues we aren't.
Minister Wlachovský, do you agree with this position of Wagner or any other Russian private army, or do you want to add something?
I think we should not have private armies in Europe, and we should not have Wagner. So yeah, I agree with it. I agree that we should deal with them.
Then we can squeeze in one last question. Yes, please, Robert. Microphone here for your boss, please, quickly. Otherwise somebody's in trouble, maybe me.
Thank you very much. Very interesting conversation. Thank you, Mr. Ministers. I would like to ask a question about Central Europe. We have different kind of meetings on the level of foreign ministers. It's V4, it's C5, it's S3. Poland has several others. And there is quite a lot. V4 seems to not work anymore. So my question is, what is your vision for S3, and where do you see that cooperation deepening? So where do you see the priorities for S3 in comparison with everything else that we have in Central Europe? Thank you.
So, yeah, Minister Lipavsky wants to start. Yes, please.
I wanted to add on a Wagner note that thanks to the heroic Ukrainians, we don't have much Wagners left in Europe. They have retreated from Bakhmut and now trying to do their operation again in Africa, because it's much easier for them, probably. So thanks to the Ukrainians, we don't have much Wagners in Europe left. S3 is a great platform. I really like it. We have a good friendship. We have a good mood. We have traveled to many cities, sending a clear message that Central Europe cares about its surrounding. We have been twice in Kiev, once in Moldova, and I think I can say aloud that we are also now working on trip to Skopje, which is in a good phase of preparation, and it sends a clear message from Central Europe that we care, that we are here, and that we are able to cooperate.
If I may add, just briefly.
Just shortly, because we are already on
have many different formats, but I believe one of the things, if we talk about Ukraine, if we talk about geostrategy, we should never take each other for granted in Europe, because meeting once a month in Brussels is not enough. And sometimes, even we find out, oh God, what is actually going on in Slovakian interior politics? So these formats, from my perspective, are extremely important in order to safeguard our unity facing threats from outside. And you mentioned the Central 5, we have the T3 with Croatia and Slovenia, we have the D5 with the German-speaking minute. So, but all of those are not, in competition. It's important to talk, and in these times even more so. So I have high expectancies, and you know what the best thing is? Out of these regional partnerships, friendship develop.
Yeah, and if I may add, I completely subscribe what Jan said and Alexander, but this richness of formats reflects the richness of Central Europe and its political dynamism. And sometimes we are up, sometimes we are down. The V4 history is one of the best illustration, and we should not forget some phases when Slovakia was the complicated partner within the V4. So I think the V4 is a valid format, but well, we have three partners which have a clear position towards Ukraine, and then we have one partner which have a slightly different position on, well, slightly, it's more than slightly, has a different position on Ukraine, and it is reflected by the frequency we meet. However, there are enough projects we can do together which will help the comfort of our citizens. So we should concentrate on that.
Thank you, ministers. And I've heard that WhatsApp and Signal are also pretty good nowadays for ministerial communication. And before I will ask you to join me in my thanks to our panelists, I have some notes to forward to you. First, there are refreshments available in the hotel lobby, and I hope also coffee for those who got up early in the morning. And the next session here on the Danube stage is at 2:20. Please thank my panelists. Thank you, ministers. I'm extremely grateful for you.